here in Acts 12, we have Peter in prison, and in verse 5, it says, and so Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. The night before Herod was to bring him to trial, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers, bound with two chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. Verse 7, suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and the light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up and said, quick, get up. And he said, and quick, get up, the angel said, and the chains fell off of Peter's wrists. And it goes on to tell about him, the angel, and Peter walking out of the jail cell, and then going on to where the people were praying for him. But here's what I want to talk to you about. In verse 5, it says that Peter was in prison, and the church was praying for him. And it doesn't just say that that they were praying for him. It says they were earnestly praying to God for Peter. So I read that and I say, well, what does earnestly mean? I mean, why didn't, Luke, when he wrote this, why didn't he say that the church was praying for Peter and the angel came, but he included the word earnestly. And we believe that every word in here is here for a reason. And so I look at that word earnestly and I say, well, what does that mean? What does earnestly mean? And I think the answer is it has something to do with why Jesus said, depart from me because I never knew you. The answer to Acts 12:5, what does earnestly mean, has something to do with Jesus when he said, depart from me because I never knew you. It has to do with that type of prayer. Jesus said, I know you prayed, but I never knew you. I know that you fed the hungry, but I never knew you. I know that you went to Vacation Bible School. You even went to church, but I never knew you. So when we give Jesus these reasons, because in his conversation, they want entrance to heaven, and Jesus is saying, you're not getting in. And then their response to that is, but we prayed, right? And Jesus says, I know you prayed. I heard you, but I never knew you. And then the people say, well, we fed the hungry, and we went to Vacation Bible, we went to church. And Jesus said, I know you went to Vacation Bible School. I know you went to church, but I never knew you. And so when we start giving these reasons and these excuses for why God ought to let us into heaven, and Jesus says, but I never knew you, and we come up with our best explanations of why God ought to let us into heaven, and Jesus keeps saying, I never knew you. I never knew you. And then we're saying, but no, I went to Vacation Bible School and I was baptized and I had an experience. I had a spiritual experience, and I signed a card and I prayed. What do you mean you didn't know me? But that's what Jesus said he was going to say. You did all these things, but I never knew you. You knew how to do religious things, but those religious things never brought us to the point where we had a personal relationship. You had a lot of religious things that you did. You kept all the rules and you jumped through all the hoops, signed a card, got baptized, went to all the classes, confirmed, had a string of pins, If you're Southern Baptist, you had pens for good church behavior, good church attendance. But Jesus said, I didn't know you. You did all the religious things that you were told to do, but I never knew you. How tragic is that? That we could do all these things thinking that we're going to get to heaven, thinking that this is what you do to know God. This is what you do to get into heaven. If I do these things, if I be this way, if I say these things, and if I sign this card, I'm in. How tragic that we think that we're getting in by doing these things. And then come to find out, Jesus says, I never knew you. And so I read here in Acts 12 and verse 5 that the church was earnestly praying for Peter's release. And I asked the question, what does earnestly mean? I believe that earnest prayer is the kind of prayer that makes you drop the mask. That kind of prayer is the kind of prayer that makes you see the impotence, the uselessness of religious rituals, of running that rat race, of being good and trying harder, and I got to pray again, and I got to count my beads, and I got to sign another card this year at Vacation Bible School. How many years have I gone to camp and I sign another card? Something's got to be wrong with this endless cycle of trying to find peace with God by our own efforts. And Jesus is saying, I never knew you. Your kind of religion was not enough to help you to see me. And so Jesus says, depart from me, for I never knew you. And I think that's the kind of earnest prayer that we see here in Acts 12 in verse 5, where it says that they earnestly prayed for Peter's release. Jesus says all that you did was good stuff. It was for me, and you said it was in my name. But it was for other people's benefit. See, you did a good thing. You did good. But you don't have a relationship with me. This is what's so dangerous about progressive theology and works-based salvation, which is no salvation, merit-based thinking, merit-based teaching. That is not the gospel. You did all these things, and Jesus said, but I don't know you. And I'm not gonna let you in. I'm not gonna let you in because the kind of praying that you did, the kind of religious activities that you did, you still got a mask on. You still fake. You say you signed a card, but you're still pretending. You say you had a feeling and you had an experience of some kind, but there's this mask and you're fake, and I don't know you. I can't get to you because of this thing that's fake about you. Your kind of religion and your kind of religious activities hasn't caused you to drop your mask. And therefore, I don't know you. So it says that they prayed earnestly, and I think that that type of prayer is the kind that God sees, and that it's not just honest prayer, because honest is not the litmus test for what is true. Honest is not the litmus test for having a relationship with God. I have a person who told me. I asked them. I said, "How do you know that you're going to get to heaven?" And they turned up their palms and they looked at me and they shrugged their shoulders. You don't turn up your palms. You don't turn up your palms and shrug your shoulders. That's something as serious as eternity and heaven and hell, and then say, "I just believe," which is what they said to me. That's what they said to me in regards to how do you know for certain that you have a relationship with God, that you're going to be in heaven. I just believe. That type of thinking is not acceptable in any school of thought. Not in medicine, not in finances. But yet we're going to take that as okay for the thing that is eternally important. Heaven and hell, and eternally with God or separated from God. I just believe. So I encourage you to think long and hard about that. Is your faith based on, is it honest in the sense that it drives you to align your belief system with what's in Scripture? So that's the thing that we're after. Not only honesty and transparency, but then ultimately, does that honesty and transparency lead you to align your belief system with Scripture and not make up a truth of your own? Does your prayer, like in verse 5, is it honest enough that it drives you to be transparent before God and then reveal that you need to make that turn so that your faith comes in line with Scripture? And I hope that's true. I hope that's an encouragement for you. You need to hear that for your own walk with the Lord. This is what I tell guys that I'm discipling, that you need to hear that for your own personal walk with the Lord. But your disciple needs to hear that. You need to have that conversation with your disciple. And that is a healthy conversation to have. And I hope that you're having that in a healthy and ongoing discipleship conversation.